Welcome to Rock Solid IP, expert strategies for creating real value from your creativity and innovation.
Hello and welcome to Rock Solid IP, expert strategies for creating real value from creativity and innovation with Rob Wells from the Rock IP law firm. I am your host, Kevin Rosenquist, and today's episode is an introduction to patent mining and mapping. Rob, great to see you again. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Kevin, it's good to see you too.
So to start, can you explain what patent mining and mapping are and how they differ from other patent analysis tools?
Sure. So patent mining is the process of going through and trying to figure out what relevant technologies are out there, who your competitors are, what types of trends there are that are currently taking place, so that you can generate actionable intelligence that you can then use for making other strategic decisions, business decisions about your R&D budgets and where you want to direct, your funds, as well as trying to figure out and make strategic decisions about how to compete with others who are, developing patents in your area. Patent mapping, on the other hand, it's just going to organize the data that you've mined already. Kind of step two, going to take and figure out, go ahead and create heat maps or figure out, who your competitors are and those general trends over the course of the last 20 years. What have they been doing? Where have they been active? What technologies are they advancing on? Or is there a particular area, for example, where one of your competitors is strongly gaining and filing a lot of different patent applications? And that might signal development in a particular area that your company might need to be aware of, as well as to kind of identify areas where you might have some more potential infringement risks or need to pay a little bit more careful attention to make sure that your product isn't going to infringe or create problems for you down the line.
And when it comes to something like patent landscaping, why is that important for businesses, particularly in technology-driven industries?
So patent landscaping, which is sort of the combination of mining and mapping, it's really helpful for companies of all sizes, whether you're a startup company or a Fortune 500 company or a Fortune 10 company. This is how we gain the actionable intelligence about other companies and what they're doing. So it shows us the countries that other companies are filing patents in. So hopefully where your competitors are filing patents applications, and highlights areas that are potentially highly over-patented, where there's a lot of competition and a lot of filings. What you want to do is be filing patents in an area where there's not a lot of competition, where you can get a large amount of patent coverage. So you do that by identifying areas within the technology that you're involved in that are going to be key areas and important to the products that you're generating as a whole, but are also not widely covered by others. And that is typically what we do when we're conducting a white space analysis. We're trying to find, where is it that, that we have some blue sky, that, where our competitors aren't currently active. Without a clear view of the competitive landscape, you're kind of flying blind, as it were. So, you're going to try to, be actionable based on what you see in the market, but what you see in the market isn't always reflected, as accurately as what you can see with patent and trademark filings.
On our last episode, we talked a lot about strategy, an IP strategy, and we talked about having a good portfolio. How do patent mining and mapping sort of fit into the broader intellectual property strategy? And are they tools primarily for large corporations, or can startups benefit as well?
Yeah, so they do have a cost. But startups can use those to develop effective strategies early on, even from the very beginning. As long as you've got some funds to throw at making those decisions, you can make better decisions based on accurately gathered intelligence. For large corporations, the tools are used pretty extensively, and they use them to manage their own portfolio, to make decisions about which patents to keep or which patents to get, to monitor the competitors, and to identify trends in emerging technologies. Startups can also benefit. With limited resources, it becomes a little bit more difficult, but it can be utilized. You just need to do it more strategically. Identify smaller, answerable questions.
Okay. And can you kind of walk us through the typical process for patent mining and mapping?
So the process typically begins with identifying the scope. And this is one of those areas, my last question said, be focused and identify small things. The very first thing that you're going to do is, define the scope. When we're talking about the scope, we're talking about what's the goal of the analysis? What's the question we want to answer? And there, do you want to look at a specific technology? Are you looking at a particular competitor's portfolio, or can you identify, just the top 3 competitors so that we can shrink the size of that search? Are you looking for market trends? So maybe limit the scope and time that you're looking at. So we're only looking at, say, like the last 5 years in filings over that time period instead of the last 20 or 30 years. Those types of things will all be helpful. So that's defining the scope. And then we'll go ahead and collect data. So we will either ourselves or we'll use a third party to go ahead and conduct that search. Based on all the keywords that we've identified, based on the scope of the search, we'll gather a bunch of different patents, hopefully all of the patents that are on point. And then we'll go ahead and review, organize, and categorize those. So whether, we'll very frequently we'll give them a ranking and identify an area where they fit in and whether or not they pose a threat. All of this gets defined by the scope and the question that you want to answer. We'll heavily analyze that data and we'll start kind of putting them into categories and figuring out either how big a threat they are or what technology area those fit into, how strong the patents themselves are, whether they pose a real large concern for your company or not, as well as to kind of identify the potential white space. And then we'll kind of create visualizations. It tends to be helpful to, whether it's a heat map that shows you where the white space is, or for example, where a competitor is filing, which countries they're filing in, or to identify the more recent trends and the numbers of patents that are being filed in a particular area. And then we'll go ahead and help our clients to make strategic decisions based on the data that we've got. So determinations about, what technology areas to invest more time and effort into and more money into, or which countries you ought to be filing patent applications in. All of that becomes really useful and helpful. But that's the overall process.
So kind of piling on that, can you sort of tell us how a typical patent mapping project might look from start to finish?
Sure. So let's take a technology. Let's say that you want lithium ion batteries, specifically for fast charging technology in EVs. And you see that I've just really limited the scope. So that very first step, we're not talking about just any battery, and we're not talking about just any purpose for a battery. We're talking specifically, it has to be a lithium ion battery and it has to be for EVs and fast charging, right? So that's significantly limited the scope of my search. With that information, we'll identify a bunch of keywords and important information about the technology that you're really looking for and the goal. Is this a patentability search? Is this a freedom to operate opinion? Is this simply a competitive analysis? Or is this a white space analysis where we're looking for other patents? From there, we'll categorize and then group all the different patents that we get back, and then we'll analyze them and sit down with you, our client, to figure out and make strategic decisions about where you're going from there.
All right. And so would you say that patent mining sort of helps companies understand the competitive landscape? Is that kind of one of the reasons to do it?
Yeah, it really does. That is one of the reasons. And you're exactly right to say it's one of the reasons, because it's not the only reason. But it does play a role in your competitive analysis, figuring out what technologies your competitors are investing in and filing patent applications in, figuring out how aggressively they're pursuing it. Do they just file one patent application on this or on a particular area in the technology, or are they kind of really concentrating a lot of expenditure in one particular area? And then, where might they be moving next based on the patent applications that they have filed? Can you glean any information about the trajectory and kind of the direction that they might be headed in?
And what are some of the most common strategic uses of patent landscaping for businesses? For instance, how might a company use patent analysis to identify white space or new opportunities for innovation?
Yeah, so you kind of already talked about one of them, right? Identifying white space. Where
I like to answer my own questions sometimes.
Right. Where you can be spending money and time as effectively as possible, and hopefully kind of creating that blue sky or blue ocean approach so that you're headed into an area where there's not a lot of competition, where it's free and clear for you to be spending money and developing. It can also help you to identify trends. So where other companies or competitors are headed, what types of technologies they are developing and filing patent applications on, and where they might be going. It can help with risk mitigation. So identifying patents that might block you. So that's the freedom to operate or patentability type of analysis, where you're trying to say, all right, can we get coverage on this? Or if I release a product, do I have a risk that I might be infringing on somebody's existing patents already? But you can also use it to identify licensing opportunities, right? So you're identifying your competitors and their patent portfolios, and then looking at their products and your own patent portfolio, you might be able to identify opportunities to approach those other companies and offer to license your existing patents to them. Or to have, for example, possibly a cross-license agreement where you recognize that they're infringing some of your patents and they're probably, vice versa. So you can go ahead then and possibly license across so that you take a license to their patents, they take a license to yours, everybody walks away happy.
You mentioned risk. When it comes to risk mitigation, how can patent mining help a company use a patent landscape search to identify those potential risks?
Patent mining certainly can help with that. Number one, like I mentioned before, we want to identify patents that we might be infringing or that we need to make sure we avoid and design around. We can also look for patents where they're being cited frequently in other patent applications, and that will kind of tell us probably the value of a particular patent and something that might be kind of cornerstone or keystone to a technology area. But you can also and so those are patents that you might want to avoid. You can also take a look at what a competitor's doing. So if you have one competitor that suddenly files a cluster of patent applications in one particular technology area and maybe is following up and really investing in a sequence of those patents, filing continuations, et cetera, that frequently reflects a drive towards that area and a desire to protect that technology that they're working on. So that can also help to identify either areas that you need to stay away from or areas that you might want to go ahead and similarly invest in IP to help cover to counteract the applications that they are filing.
Startups, obviously, they're often operating with limited resources. How can a startup with maybe a small team or a small budget leverage patent mining and mapping to make informed strategic decisions?
I always say that there is a strategy for every company size. And while it's great to have a lot of money to throw at the problem, startup companies just don't. So the strategy here in terms of patent mining and mapping for an initial startup company coming at it from either mom's garage or still trying to side hustle your startup company and not having a lot of funds to throw at stuff like intellectual property looks more like trying to choose free or very cost effective solutions for gathering your patent material, the material that you're trying to mine. You can do that by, for example, using Google search, or the Patent and Trademark Office has a database that you can go ahead and search. There is a bit of a learning curve to it. So I suggest maybe getting your attorney involved, but also by trying to limit the scope of the question you're trying to answer. Scope creep is real and it happens in patent searches all the time. So we'll run, for example,
I'm sorry, what did you scope what?
Creep. So
Scope creep.
Yeah. So where we want to answer one question and then, we want to conduct a freedom to operate analysis, see if we're going to potentially infringe any other patents. But while we're doing that, we also start asking questions about whether we should patent X technology or this other technology. And so then all of a sudden we start saying, well, we want more information. We don't want to focus just on this one narrow issue. You fix that by trying to really concretely define your scope before you even begin starting to search. And then to work with some type of an IP consultant or a law firm to make sure that you target that approach and stay on target so that you're not wasting time and resources.
To kind of wrap up here, what advice would you give to entrepreneurs and business leaders who might be thinking about using patent landscaping as a tool to drive their innovation strategy?
Yeah, I would say number one, start with a clear objective. Come to me with the question that you really want to know the answer to. See if you can't put it into one sentence. And then let us help you define the exact scope and help you stay within the budget that you've got for your project. And then we'll go ahead and get you as good a coverage as we can get and as the best research that we can to answer the question that you have within your budget. And then we do recommend, getting an attorney. It's fairly easy to not find all of the relevant references. And there are some tricks and techniques to trying to find them, but they're fairly technical and not easy for me to just simply explain. So I would say, make sure that you do at least consult with an IP attorney. It's probably worth a couple of hours of their time to make sure that you're getting the right coverage and actually viewing the getting all of the results and making sure that you see the competitive intelligence that you've gathered.
Great advice as always, Rob. Well, thanks for tuning in to Rock Solid IP, expert strategies for creating real value from creativity and innovation with Rob Wells. To connect with Rob, you can head to rock-ip.com and like and subscribe to our channel. We always appreciate that, and leave us a review if you can as well. Rob, thanks so much for being here and shedding some light on something that's a little confusing. Really appreciate your time.
Absolutely, Kevin. Anytime.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.